Thank you. So members, now we're in public, we will I'll go to the draft minutes and refer members to the draft minutes of proceedings at pages 25 to 39 of the meeting pack. Are members content that the draft minutes of the meeting of 26th of June 2025 are a true reflection of the proceedings?
Content, yeah.
Thank you. Move to matters arising. There are no matters arising. Then to item 6, which is the regulation that we have just been discussing, which is EU 2025-1561 as regards obligations of economic operators concerning battery due diligence policies. And we are going to get some departmental oral evidence. Can I refer members to relevant pages again at pages 5 to 24 of the meeting pack and to pages 2 to 10 of the table papers? I remind members again that at its meeting on the 26th of June, the committee originally agreed to request a departmental assessment of impact when this piece of legislation was still a proposed EU Act. However, the committee noted that the Act was likely to be published in the official journal of the EU over the summer, and the committee agreed to inform the relevant department that its request may therefore be superseded with a request on the published EU Act. Can I remind members again that the committee was notified on the 31st of July 2025 of the now published EU Act, and the previous request for an assessment of impact was superseded as agreed by the committee. Therefore, the assessment of impact only refers to the published piece of legislation. The assessment of impact from the Department of Agriculture, Environment and Rural Affairs can be found at pages 17 to 19 of the meeting pack. Can I welcome then Tommy McNamara, the policy lead for ELV at DAERA, and Catherine O'Hara, the policy advisor from DAERA also. Welcome and thanks for attending today. I'll hand over to you and ask you to brief committee at this stage. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to brief the committee on Regulation EU 2025-1561, which amends Regulation 2023-1542, which is commonly referred to as the EU Batteries Regulation, as regards obligations of economic operators concerning battery due diligence policies. I understand the committee has already received a copy of DAERA's assessment of impact for the regulation, which includes a link to the explanatory memorandum prepared by DEFRA. The EU's battery regulation provides the regulatory framework for batteries and replaces the EU Batteries Directive 2006/66/EC, which is listed in Annex 2 of the Windsor Framework. Under the terms of the Windsor Framework, the EU's battery regulation is applied in Northern Ireland since the 18th of February 2024, with a series of staggered implementation dates, which are replacing articles of the old EU Batteries Directive over time. Regulation 2025-1561 was published on the 30th of July and came into force the following day. It amends Article 48 of the EU's battery regulation concerning due diligence obligations for economic operators placing batteries on the market or putting them into service, which is a policy area that is reserved to the UK Government. The EU's battery regulation requires economic operators over the turnover threshold to adopt a due diligence policy that has been verified by a notified third-party body. In order to address social and environmental risks, these policies require operators to map supply chains, identify risks and take mitigation action in respect of the extraction, processing and trading of certain raw materials and secondary raw materials used for the purposes of battery manufacturing. Due diligence obligations were initially to be applied from the 18th of August 2025. However, battery raw material supply chains are affected by a shifting geopolitical landscape, leaving the battery industry with many challenges related to sourcing of raw materials. In addition, due diligence obligations include requirements for verification by notified bodies within each member state. However, approximately only half of member states have appointed their notifying authority, meaning that the EU Commission has been unable to determine a standard for accreditation of notified bodies for due diligence obligations. This regulation delays implementation of due diligence obligations by 2 years to the 18th of August 2027. As well as amending the date the Commission is to publish guidelines on due diligence requirements from February 2025 to July 2026. This ensures that the current regulatory status quo is maintained for a further 2 years, providing businesses with more time to ensure their due diligence processes are in line with legislative requirements. In addition, it provides time to resolve difficulties with Member States appointing and notifying authorities and the setting of a standard for the accreditation of notified bodies. DAERA's assessment is that it is likely the regulation will not have a significant impact specific to everyday life of communities in Northern Ireland in a way that is liable to persist. The relevant due diligence provisions concern the placing of batteries on the market and are therefore reserved to the UK Government. It stated in its explanatory memorandum that the 2-year delay will provide businesses with more time to develop their due diligence processes. It is also DAERA's assessment that non-application of the regulation will not have a significant impact specific to everyday life of communities in Northern Ireland in a way that is liable to persist. Should the regulation not apply in Northern Ireland but apply in EU member states, businesses in Northern Ireland would legally have to apply the due diligence obligations in advance of any other any EU country, and they would therefore be at a disadvantage. Although there may be some impact on businesses, it would not be deemed to be significant, particularly as the Commission has yet to determine a standard for the accreditation of notified bodies. Nor would it be liable to persist given that the regulation will fully apply across the EU within a period of 2 years. No formal stakeholder engagement has taken place at this stage. The European Commission did not conduct a public consultation, nor an impact assessment on the proposed amendments before they published the regulation. As noted previously, the change is specific to the challenges related to sourcing raw materials and establishing notifying authorities. I'm conscious that in setting out the background I have referenced the existing battery regulations and their associated requirements, so I think it's important to emphasise that the regulation being considered today relates solely to due diligence requirements, specifically amending timelines to allow more time for compliance. That concludes the DAERA presentation, and we would be happy to take any questions the committee has.
Thank you very much. I'm thankful you dealt with that right at the end there, providing that clarity, because my own question was just to probably restate that this is not about the sort of substantive regulation, but just about this short delay. So whatever people's views on the substantive regulation, that's not really what's up for discussion today. The only thing I'll query, you said it may have, if we were to do that unilaterally, that there might be some impact on some businesses. Is that just a case of you saying there in any case there may always be some unforeseen circumstances that we haven't thought about, or is there specific impacts that you're aware of that you might wish to speak to?
It's a difficult one because legally they're required to do it, but number one, there's no way of enforcing it. The Commission aren't expecting them to do it, but some businesses may think, oh, we have to do this. Now, it would be beneficial if they considered it, but some businesses may think it would place them at a disadvantage, but we don't have any specific instances of what those disadvantages would be.
But until they, if this being delayed, until that it comes on that timeline, then our businesses are not going to be required essentially by the EU to take those steps either.
No, not at all. There'll be no disadvantage to them whatsoever.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? Thank you, and thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All the best. Members, under paragraph 8.1 of Schedule 6B to the 1998 Act, the committee must decide today whether to hold an inquiry into the published Replacement EU Act that has been notified. Should the committee fail to decide, the failure will be treated as a decision not to hold an inquiry. I'll ask the committee then, having regard to the legal advice on whether it appears likely that the Replacement EU Act significantly differs in whole or part from the content or scope of the EU instruments which it amends or replaces, and the departmental assessment on whether it appears likely that the Replacement Act would have significant impact specific to everyday life of communities here in Northern Ireland in a way that is liable to persist. Can I ask members, do they wish to hold an inquiry into Regulation EU 2025-1561 as regards obligations of economic operators concerning battery due diligence policies? I can advise members that the committee's decision in relation to the Act will be published on its webpage. Can I then? Sorry.
Chair, it is a peculiar one, because whilst the original regulation, which I do take issue with in terms of understanding and the supply chain GBNI, the particular inquiry today, what on earth would it achieve, given the fact that all it would be doing is having an inquiry into a delay? So I don't see, in a sense, how that is achievable. We have debated here in terms of with our officials the issues affecting the GB&I trade, but ultimately, if today is just primarily about the particular inquiry into a delay, I don't see what that would achieve. So just to put on record again, I have issue with the original regulation, but I think this is semantics in terms of...
Can I take that as a proposal not to hold an inquiry?
Yeah, I just don't believe, I'm not taking an opinion on it.
Yeah. Any other proposals? So, can I suggest that the committee's view is that an inquiry is not appropriate in this case?
Agree.
Thank you. Moving on then.
Agreed.
The committee has agreed to inform the relevant department that its request may therefore be superseded. I'm back on the wrong page, my bad. Sounding very familiar. Oh, apologies. If members are content, moving on to item 9 then, if members are content, I will deal with items 7, 8 and 9 of the agenda together. These are 3 distinct proposed EU acts which were all notified to the committee by the UK Government on the 17th of July. Item 7 is a proposed regulation seeking to establish a new legal framework for the European Chemicals Agency. The relevant papers are at pages 42 to 139 of the meeting pack. Are members content that legal advice and an initial departmental assessment of impact are requested in relation to the proposed regulation at item 7, with the usual time frame of 1 month, in order to assist the committee in deciding whether to monitor the proposal?
Yes, and I think it would be important for us just to establish the next change to that governance scientific bodies in association with the EU, but ultimately, will we have representation on that? I assume the answer is no, given that it is an EU body. It's further just highlighting that democratic deficit that we continue to face. I'd imagine officials will be able to answer that directly about whether or not, we will have oversight in terms of the actual body.
Well, that's something we address by the department if they come with the time.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that offhand, but yeah, that's perhaps something to pick up in that oral evidence session.
I think it's unlikely, but I want to point out that hypocrisy on that aspect.
Yeah, absolutely, and we'll have that opportunity then to ask for that to be monitored another stage. Are members content with that?
Content, yeah.
Thank you. Item 8 is a proposed regulation seeking to postpone the application of a number of provisions of the existing EU regulation on the classification, labelling and packaging of substances until 1st of January 2028. The relevant papers are at page 140 to 150 of the meeting pack. Are members content to take the same actions in relation to the proposed regulation at item 8?
Yeah, content, yeah.
Thank you. Item 9 is a proposed regulation seeking to simplify requirements and procedures under existing EU legislation related to chemical products. The relevant papers for it are at 151 to 224 of the meeting pack. Are members content to take the same actions in relation to item 9?
Yeah, content, yeah. Moving
then, members, to correspondence. The item 10.1 at page 242 to 233. That has been a mistake. Check what page that is at, members.
Apologies, members. Yeah, just that one's commencing at page 227 of your pack.
227, and is an update from the Executive Office on proposed new and replacement EU acts which started their legislative passage before the committee was established. Are members content to note?
Yep.
Items 10.2 to 10.3 are quarterly status updates from RAISE on EU proposals which the committee is monitoring. At item 10.2, pages 234 to 238 of the impact relates to proposed regulation regarding electric vehicle supply equipment, compressed gas dispensers, and electricity, gas and thermal energy meters. The European Parliament and the Council of the European Union are both still working to establish their respective negotiating positions in order to commence trilogues. Item Item 10.3 at pages 239 to 241 of the meeting pack relates to a proposed regulation regarding the welfare of dogs and cats and their traceability. A first round of trilogue negotiations has taken place in relation to this proposal, but an agreement between the Parliament and Council has not yet been reached in relation to it. Further negotiations are expected to take place in the coming weeks, and although no timeline has been confirmed, our members content to note both updates and publish them on the relevant committee web pages.
Yeah.
Thank you. Item 10.4, page 242 of the meeting pack, is correspondence from the Secretary of State for Northern Ireland regarding Regulation 2024-2865 on classification, labelling and packaging of substances and mixtures. The committee held an inquiry into this regulation in December 2024. The letter states that the Health and Safety Executive has launched a consultation to the industry and the public regarding proposals on the government's future chemical reforms. The proposals being considered include applying the regulation in Great Britain with a view to ensuring UK internal market consistency. Our members content to forward the correspondence to the relevant statutory committees, namely the Committee for Economy, the Committee for Health and the Committee for Justice. Jonathan?
Yes, Chair, I think that is important. If I remember rightly, the discussion at the time, the frustration from the committee was that we had no direct sight over what GB industry were saying in terms of how the particular regulation would impact upon their trading with Northern Ireland. So just where possible, I think we need to reiterate again and again that in order for this committee to make informed decisions on these regulations, that we are equipped with that key information, because quite often, and it's the same with the correspondence in relation to GIs for wines, spirit drinks, etc., quite often it's not the Northern Ireland manufacturer that we're worried about in that regard, because they don't exist. It's that GB supply chain. So, further interaction between us and government on that is certainly something that we need to be pushing for.
Yeah, I would agree, and I've spoken previously that I think the government needs to be more proactive in its approach to some of these issues as well. Anything else on that issue, members? No. So content then to pass it to the statutory committees.
Content, yeah.
Moving on then to items 10.5 and 10.6, both relate to the UK government's EMs on the European Commission Work Programme 2025. Item 10.5 at page 244 of the meeting pack is a copy of the House of Lords Northern Ireland Scrutiny Committee's most recent letter to the Paymaster General, and a copy of the previous response from the Paymaster General. In this exchange is at item 10.6, which can be found at page 246. Are members content to note both items of correspondence? Agreed. Item 10.7 at page 252 of the meeting pack is a copy of correspondence from the Paymaster General to the House of Lords Northern Ireland Scrutiny Committee regarding veterinary medicines and the Windsor framework. Are members content to note? Note.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure. I think, and this is obviously related to this committee, but since we've last met as a committee, it's been a very, very difficult summer for particularly businesses and consumers in relation to the Windsor framework and its operating model. We've seen that in reports. Evidently the EU has tightened its grip on a lot of key aspects, and it's wide ranging, some of them beyond this committee, whether that's EU rules on the movement of used agricultural machinery that's been foisted upon local dealers and farm businesses, EU rules governing the marketing and authorisation of veterinary medicines, including the ability to source vital health products from GB for animal health. New requirements coming in next month requiring even more information from hauliers who are already experiencing significant disruption in their trade routes. And it's also full steam ahead with the costly not for EU labelling rules. So I'm saying this in the context of, despite what we've heard about the SPS apparent breakthrough with the EU, the government, and particularly the Labour government, has actually acted in self-harm to businesses in Northern Ireland. The operation and erection of further border control posts is an example of that. So whilst that's a broad view, and some of it does sit outside this committee, I think given the context of the eventual SPS agreement between GB and the EU, and how that will impact upon how future EU law is going to be scrutinised, and it'll come into context about how this committee relates with its other scrutiny bodies at Westminster, I would propose that the committee write to the Cabinet Office, firstly expressing concern with regards to recent developments and disruption, but secondly that we seek information and a timeline on the finalisation of an SPS agreement and how the government intends to oversee implementation in terms of parliamentary scrutiny. There's huge issues there that our businesses haven't got any detail on, we as a committee don't have any detail on, and I'm worried, given the relationship and the attitude that this Labour government has shown towards this issue, that it's going to fall on deaf ears, and it's important that we shout loud for our own businesses and consumers.
Well, thank you, John. From a personal basis, I would concur with that, but I also think whatever you're viewing these things, that timeline would be useful to everyone in committee, and that's personal view. Can I ask if there's any other opinions or views on that, or any other? No one?
It's just to say, Chair, I mean, if it's a letter to request an update on the timeline for veterinary agreement, no objection to that at all.
Yeah. No.
Chair, can I just, or Deputy Chair, can I just check from a practical perspective, will members be content for that to be a correspondence that issues from our Chair?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Are content with that? Yeah.
Yeah, content. Yeah.
Thank you. Moving on then, members, items 10.8 and 10.14 are all copies of correspondence from the House of Lords Northern Ireland Scrutiny Committee to the UK Government. Item 10.8 at page 256 of the meeting pack relates to Regulation EU 2024-1860 regarding gradual rollout of Furamed. Are members content to note? Noted. Item 10.9, page 261 of the meeting pack relates to proposed EU regulation on the welfare of dogs and cats, which this committee is monitoring, and which we will, which we considered a quarterly update from RIAs on a few moments ago. At our last meeting on 26th of June, the committee agreed to ask DAERA for an update on domestic policy in this area. A response from the department is expected in the coming weeks. Are members content to note? Noted. Item 10.10 at page 265 of the meeting pack relates to a commission delegated regulation on effective and safe use of veterinary medicinal products. Are members content to note? Noted. At item 10.11 of at page 270 of the meeting pack, it relates to Regulation 2024-1143 on geographical indications for wine, spirit drinks and agricultural products. Are members content to note?
Yeah, notwithstanding what I've said earlier,
Yes,
it's covering a lot of these issues.
Absolutely. No, I understand. Thank you, members. Moving then to item 10.12 of page 274 of the meeting pack, relates to EU Regulation 2023-2411 on geographical indications for craft and industrial products. Are members content to note? Thank you. Item 10.13 at page 278 of the meeting pack relates to proposed regulation regarding certain market rules and sectoral support measures in the wine sector, which this committee agreed to monitor at its last meeting on 26th of June. We are due to receive quarterly status updates from RIAs on the proposal. Are members content to note? Thank you. Item 10.14 at page 286 of meeting pack relates to EU Regulation 2024-1252 on establishing a framework for ensuring a secure and sustainable supply of critical raw materials. Are members content to note? Noted. Item 10.15 at page 290 of the meeting pack is a copy of correspondence from the Paymaster General to the House of Commons Northern Ireland Affairs Committee regarding the recent UK-EU Summit and Joint Committees exchange views on the EU Artificial Intelligence Act and the EU Cyber Resilience Act. This correspondence refers to a separate letter sent to the Lords Committee on the 12th of June in an exchange which the ESC was initially copied into. However, the committee does not yet appear to have received that letter as yet. Accordingly, our members content to note that this correspondence and also request that the Cabinet Office furnishes a copy of the letter dated 12th of June, which is referred to within it. Agreed, members? Agreed. Thank you. Item 10.16 at page 295 of the meeting pack is a copy of correspondence from the Paymaster General and the Secretary of State for Northern Ireland to the House of Lords Northern Ireland Scrutiny Committee following their joint appearance before it during its inquiry on strengthening Northern Ireland's voice in the context of the Windsor Framework. The correspondence notes that the UK Government is preparing to arrange publication of the final report from the independent review of the Windsor Framework. This is separate from the Lords inquiry. The correspondence states that the UK Government is required to respond to the report from the independent review within 6 months of receiving it. The Democratic Scrutiny Committee has previously engaged with both the Lords Committee inquiry and the independent review during their respective evidence gathering processes. Our members content to note. Thank you. Moving on then to item 10.17 at page 301 of the meeting pack. Is correspondence from KME Steelworks regarding EU customs duty on raw sheet aluminium. The correspondence does not appear to directly relate to a proposed or published EU Act within the scope of this committee. However, members will recall that we are gathering evidence on a proposed regulation reforming the EU Customs Code, which may still be of interest to this correspondent. The correspondent also asks for this email to be shared further within the Assembly and at Westminster, and it may be of interest to the Committee for Economy here in the Assembly, and likewise it may fall into the stated remit of the House of Lords Northern Ireland Scrutiny Committee, which is to consider matters related to the implementation of the protocol and the Windsor Framework. Our members content to share this correspondence with the Committee for the Economy and the House of Lords Northern Ireland Scrutiny Committee.
Sure.
Jonathan?
Yes, and the first point, I think it's important that it goes to the Lords Subcommittee. I also believe it would be appropriate to send it on to the Secretary of State and those involved in the Windsor Framework. Not sure what relevance it will have at the Committee for Economy at this stage, but certainly as a first priority, that's what I would be suggesting. It is quite detailed and complex, but ultimately many of these decisions, particularly on tariffs, are largely beyond the control of the Assembly, so it's important that we get it to eyes that can help influence the decision.
So, members, is there any other views or things that are members happy to add the Secretary of State to that then list of people that we're going to send that to? Yep, thank you. Thank you, members. Are members content to write back to the correspondent and advise them of the specific role of the Democratic Scrutiny Committee, the steps taken to share their correspondence, and inform them that the Democratic Scrutiny Committee is gathering evidence on a proposed regulation on customs code reform which may be of interest to them? Agreed, members?
Agreed.
Thank you. We move then to chairperson's business. I don't have any business. Ciara, do you have any business?
No, David, thank
There we
you.
go. Any other business? Do any other members have any other business? No. And move to the next item, which is the date, time and place of next meeting, informing members that that as no published acts were notified to the committee this morning, we will not meet next week. The next meeting has been scheduled for Thursday, the 11th of September at 2025 at 10 a.m. in room 30. However, we may meet before that depending on statutory business, which members will be no doubt informed of. At this stage, I'd adjourn the meeting and ask